Everyone on the base laughed when a quiet young girl asked to train on the shooting range. But when she picked up the rifle, the entire camp went silent. Because what she did next broke every SEAL record ever set. In the relentless heat of the desert military base, where rules were carved into routine and expectations stood firm like steel pillars, there appeared someone who didn't seem to belong. A small girl, no older than 12, stood at the entrance of the shooting range, wearing dusty sneakers and holding on to the straps of a faded backpack. Her name was Liana, and she had arrived on base only an hour earlier, traveling with her father, a maintenance technician assigned temporarily to help repair equipment. She didn't speak much, but her eyes, sharp, observant, full of focus, took in every detail around her. Soldiers hurried across the grounds, engines roared in the motor pool, and the sun burned fiercely above. But Liana walked slowly, with purpose, like she had already chosen exactly where she needed to be. And then she stopped, right in front of the shooting range. Colonel Bradford, a seasoned officer with 20 years of service, stood nearby with several elite shooters. They were preparing for a demonstration, and the atmosphere buzzed with confidence. Records were expected to be challenged, maybe broken, pride was in the air. But the moment the colonel noticed the girl walking toward the bench where the rifles were laid out, he raised an eyebrow. "Little one," he said, trying not to laugh, "this is a restricted area." Liana looked up, calm as a quiet morning. "I know," she said softly. "I just want to try." The soldiers around him chuckled. Some shook their heads. A few whispered things like, "Cute kid," and, "Someone get her a juice box." But Liana didn't flinch. She didn't look embarrassed. She simply waited, patient, steady, almost like time worked differently for her. The colonel crossed his arms. "You want to use a military shooting range?" he asked. "Yes," she replied, "just once." Her father rushed in, breathless. "Liana, I told you to wait at the workshop." But she wasn't reckless. She wasn't trying to cause trouble. She simply looked at her father and said, "Dad, please. I just need one chance." For a moment, the colonel studied her. There was something unusual, something disciplined in her stance, in the way she scanned the environment. Not with childish curiosity, but with deliberate awareness. So, half joking, half testing, he finally said, "All right. One try, but only if you can lift the rifle safely, and only under supervision." To everyone's surprise, Liana nodded confidently. The soldiers stepped aside as she approached the bench. She rested her small hands on the table, breathing with unusual control, almost like she had practiced it 1,000 times. "She's too small to handle recoil," one soldier muttered. "She's gonna drop it," another whispered. But Liana wasn't listening. In fact, everything around her seemed to fade. The world grew quiet. She selected a rifle with hands so steady it made the colonel narrow his eyes. She positioned herself exactly the way professionals did, body angled, feet planted, cheek resting lightly against the stock. "Who taught you that stance?" the colonel asked, amazed. "My mom," she said softly, just loud enough for him to hear. There was something heavy in those words, something that made the colonel stop smiling. Then, without hesitation, Liana looked through the scope. Her breathing slowed, her heartbeat steadied, and then, soft as a whisper, she squeezed the trigger. A sharp hole appeared dead center on the target, so precise it made trained soldiers sit up straighter. The colonel blinked. "Beginner's luck," he muttered, even though his throat had suddenly gone dry. Liana fired again, and again, and again, each shot, perfect, unshaken, unbelievably precise. The murmurs behind her stopped completely. The laughter faded. The soldiers who once smirked now stepped forward, eyes wide, jaws tense. Someone whispered, "Sir, that's the SEAL qualification spread." But she wasn't finished. Liana calmly adjusted the scope, barely a millimeter, and fired the longest range shot on the field. The bullet struck a metal plate so far away that most shooters on base only hit it on their best days. She hit it dead center, not once, but 3 times in a row. Silence swept across the range. The colonel slowly approached her, disbelief written all over his face. "Liana, your mother taught you." She lowered the rifle gently. "Before she got sick," Liana said, "but she told me never to use what she taught me unless it was for something good. Something that mattered." Her father took a shaky breath. "Sir, Liana's mom was a competitive markswoman before she passed. One of the best in the country." Liana watched her train for years. Suddenly, everything made sense. The poise, the discipline, the impossible accuracy. The colonel swallowed hard. "I'm sorry for what we said," he murmured. But Liana simply smiled. Not prideful, not boastful, just gentle and warm. "It's okay," she said. "You didn't know." The colonel stepped back, looking at the shattered expectations behind him, and the history rewritten in front of him. "Liana," he said firmly, "you just broke every record held by elite marksmen on this base. Including SEAL assessment scores." The officers nodded, stunned. Her father couldn't speak, his chest tightened with pride and emotion. The colonel kneeled slightly to face her. "You're remarkable, and your mother would be proud." Liana looked down at the rifle, the symbol of the bond she once shared with her mother, and whispered, "I hope so." Without anyone asking, she carefully placed it back on the bench, exactly where it belonged. Then she looked at the colonel and said, "Thank you for letting me try." And she walked away, leaving behind a group of soldiers who had just witnessed something unforgettable. A quiet girl, underestimated and overlooked, who stepped onto a range and redefined excellence. No bragging, no ego, just pure, disciplined heart. And from that day forward, whenever anyone on the base spoke about greatness, they didn't mention medals or ranks. They spoke of the day a young girl came out of nowhere, asked for one chance, and, without ever meaning to, broke every record in the book. A legend born not from noise, but from quiet strength.